Marvel Cinematic Universe versus DC Cinematic Universe. And alright, so I should talk about Kevin Durant?
No, it's just a dramatic lightning for this.
Okay. And I should clarify this because when I say Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm just saying Marvel Studios Cinematic Universe, and when I say DC, it's really, well, I mean, DC's kind of better because WB owns that also, because we're not going to talk about the Sony ones, which is the Spider-Mans. We're not going to talk about the Fox, which has all the X-Men and everything like that.
So we're not going to talk about the best ones. Now I'm upset. I can't do this.
The best ones, Marvel has done an amazing job.
They have, but the best is still, well, okay.
All right, now I love the core series of X-Men. I love the core movie series with the First Class and the Apocalypse is going to be awesome, and Days of Future Past was awesome. I love those, but I mean the Wolverine Origins, that was horrible. Wolverine 2 was mediocre at best. They've messed up on a good amount of those, and so has Sony. I mean, Spider-Man 3, I liked it, but it wasn't really.
But they have the best heights. They have the best heights.
Well, yeah.
X-Men has the best heights.
So. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, we're going to just talk about Marvel Studios versus DC.
Right.
And because they both have come out and released their slates for the next about 6 years. Now, if you count in the Sony and Marvel and DC and Fox productions, there's going to be about 40 superhero movies from between now and 2020. So there's going to be a lot. So we had to cut it down somehow, or else we could never talk about it.
Yeah,
but so
I sent you a link with all of them too.
Did you?
I don't know if you saw it. You don't look at the thing I sent you, though.
I didn't get it, you jerk.
I sent it to you right before the show. I'm looking at it right now. Look at all these movies. Look at
I'm about to tell them. So let's start with Marvel. So Marvel's slate, you have the next Marvel movie from Marvel Studios upcoming is Avengers 2: Age of Ultron. That's coming out in May 1st, 2015. Then you have Ant-Man, which is coming out July 17th, 2015. And that will officially end Phase 2, which that's pretty cool. And then we have the next
with Ant-Man? Wait, why are they ending Phase 2 with Ant-Man?
I don't know.
Or it just happens to have, like, maybe it's not related? But
I don't know. I guess we're going to have to watch and see. I think that's part of the thing.
It just seems odd for the finisher to be Ant-Man.
Yeah, but that's the end of Phase 2. That is the official end of Phase 2. So then Phase 3 is going to start with Captain America: Civil War in May of 2016. Then we're going to have Doctor Strange, who's rumored to have Benedict Cumberbatch be Doctor Strange, and it's looking like it's almost close to being confirmed, which is awesome. And that'll come out in November 2016. Then in 2017, May 2017, we'll have Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Then in July, we'll have Thor Ragnarok. Then in November, we're going to have a Black Panther movie, which is cool that finally got announced. And they're also saying that a lot of these characters are going to start showing up in movies before their solo movies. Like we might see Ant-Man and Black Panther in Avengers 2 before, or maybe Black Panther, especially I hear he might be in the Captain America Civil War movie before they get their own. Then we'll have Avengers Infinity War Part 1. That'll come out in May 2018. We have Captain Marvel, and that will feature the universe Captain Marvel, because there's been Captain Marvel. There's a whole bunch of iterations of that character, but they're going to focus on the Carol Danvers version. Then we're going to have the Inhumans come out in, November of 2018. And then wrap it up, I think this is what wraps up Phase 3, is Avengers Infinity War Part 2 in May 2019. So we have a lot of movies coming out there. And then we have the DC slate. So I'm just going to run through this real quick. We have Batman vs. Superman coming out in 2016, March of 2016. Suicide Squad is going to come out in August of 2016. Then the next year you have Wonder Woman in June of 2017. Justice League 1 will come out November 2017. Going to get a Flash movie in March of 2018. Then we're going to get an Aquaman.
They're doing. I guess they're going to introduce Flash in Justice League.
Yeah, they're kind of doing it a little differently there than
I think they're just trying to rush out a Justice League.
Hold on, let me just get the list through. We have all those. We'll talk about that. But then we have Aquaman in July of 2018. Shazam the next year in April 2019. Justice League 2 will be.
You missed one.
Which one?
I think it's still to be confirmed, but there's going to be a Lego Batman in 2018.
Okay. Really? You're going to do that to me?
It's by Warner Bros.
Okay, fine. You're right. It belongs. It belongs on the list. You're right.
It is.
But
I'm going to be thrilled to see how they tie in Lego Batman with the rest of the DC universe.
the DC universe. But okay, so then we have Shazam is April 2019. Justice League 2 will be June 2019. Cyborg will be coming out in April 2020. Then we'll have Justice League 2 come out in June 2020. And then there's also going to be a Green Lantern in 2020.
Don't reboot that one.
Yeah, well, they need to reboot it bad because that last one was horrible. They've also said that there's going to be a Ben Affleck Batman movie somewhere in there and a Man of Steel 2 somewhere in there. They haven't announced any dates, but those are going to come.
Hold on. Whoa. What if the Ben Affleck Batman movie is the Lego Batman movie?
Well, because they already have Will Arnett as the voice of Batman, so that probably can't happen.
They're changing
it. they're going to change it. Well, let's talk about, now that you know all the bazillion movies that are going to come out of those two studios in the next 6 years, let's talk about a little bit of the differences. Now, Marvel Studios I'd say they have more of a proven track record with their characters. I'm trying to think of a Marvel Studios movie that they've done bad, and I can't think of one right now. Iron Man 2 was kind of...
There's a few in there that were not great.
I wasn't a huge fan of Thor 1 either, so...
Yeah, Hulk movie was okay.
Well, The Incredible Hulk was good, but the one before that, with Eric Bana in it, was horrible. The Ang Lee directed one I thought was just garbage. Hot garbage.
Yeah, that wasn't Marvel Studios, though, I thought. I didn't think, anyway.
I think it was, but that's why they rebooted it like 3 years later. But they have more of a proven track record than DC and WB does. Now, that's kind of pushing to the side all the Batman projects because most of those have been awesome, and those are all WB movies. But when you think about, like, Green Lantern, was not a fan of that. That was some hot garbage too. You have what was the other one?
There's a couple failed Superman movies.
Well, yeah, there was the Return of Superman, which was garbage. Man of Steel wasn't horrible, but I didn't think it was that good. But now again,
I didn't think Return of Superman was garbage either. It was kind of a just darker rehash of the original one from the 80s.
Garbage. Man of Steel was better, but Return of Superman was garbage.
I enjoyed it enough. It was not it's not one that I cared about enough to see again. I saw it once.
I saw it once, and I was like, please let me forget that. But I'm not a big fan of Superman anyway, because his superpowers is he's just better at everything than anybody. So he's a cheat character. He's just one of those guys. So I'm not sure who's gonna. The DC universe definitely has some of the greatest characters to pull from, and they've shown that they can do it right with Batman. But that's when they get like a legendary director like Tim Burton to come in and do it, or Christopher Nolan to spearhead some of those things. So what are they going to do? Now, I believe Joss Whedon is going to be in on the action, which he's done some really good things. So I'm excited to see that. But
honestly, you know what I think is the key to Batman's success over and over, and Marvel's success? Like we talked about, DC has plenty of great characters, but if you compare, I always felt DC was less accessible. It was more about these are the supermen. These are the guys that are just so far out there. Marvel was made to be a little bit more relatable. Like, yes, these are superheroes mostly, but they're not that far beyond reach. They're normal people that either gain superpowers or X-Men. They have it. Some of them have it the whole time, but they're a little bit more accessible. They're not as overpowered as a lot of the DC ones happen to be, and you're right. That's probably the key with Batman. Batman is the one that's like that. He doesn't.
And they do go out of their way to show the flaws in a lot of these characters in the Marvel universe. They say, okay, yeah, these are this is a superhero, but he's with regards, the exception of Thor. Here they're human. They have their flaws, and even Thor, they show his flaws. They show his compassion.
And they're conflicted. There's shades of gray in there. They're not even the really good guys sometimes have their dark streaks, and the bad guys have their good streaks and things like that. It happens a little bit in DC as well. That's
Yeah.
admittedly it happens in DC, but you get more of a feeling of that readily from Marvel, I felt, than DC, except for with Batman.
Batman, you're right. They just, Batman.
I think that's why
like
Batman
I said, you
does
kind of push Batman to the side of all of WB's failures with the DC comics, just because they've done Batman over and over so well. So but again, the Marvel movies have consistently been pretty solid, and the way they've kind of started to tie them all into the same universe, and they kind of started with a plan, which helps because you have Kevin Feige, sitting on top of it all. I don't know who's sitting on top of all of the WB stuff. If there's one person who's kind of like, okay, this is going to go to that, to this, to that, to this, to that, to this, so you can tell Marvel has more of a plan to link everything in together, but it looks like DC will be turning into that with the Justice League and everything like that. So now one plus for DC is that they do own all the characters under one umbrella. WB, I believe, has full access to the whole catalog, whereas with Marvel you have it split up between 3 studios. So it definitely would make it easier for them to take a lot of those big, huge, overarching stories and connect them together. I mean, are we going to see... Probably not going to see a Crisis on Infinite Earths, just because they have one streamlined storyline. That really came about because it was just so convoluted in the DC universe. But, are we going to see like a Blackest Night, thing where all the superheroes die and come back? Maybe they'll kill off a couple superheroes in a couple movies and bring them back in the Darkest Night, or, we might...
I think the question on a lot of people's minds for the DC universe is this new setup that they're really trying to tie in with the DC stuff, is that going to be based off of the New 52 or not? Or is it going to be based
that's
on
a good question, because the New 52 has come through and a lot of people don't really like a lot of the stuff that's happened with that.
Yeah. So that's going to be a big question.
But we will see.
If DC's committed to it, they're going to try and push it with the movies. But we'll see.
But I think that's kind of where the movie universe kind of separates itself from the comic universe. Yeah, they borrow the stories from there, but they never copy them directly. They can always
and I'm wondering how much control DC, the publisher, has over the direction of the movies. Like we talked about, it's the DC universe, but it's Warner that's making the movies. Yeah. Warner owns DC, of course, but Warner's a bigger company. Marvel, even though they're part of Disney now, Marvel Studios takes control of the movies that we're talking about. And so the comic book making group, it's a different division, but there's more of a connection there. I'm wondering if there's more abstraction being under Warner, and Warner.
Yeah, but again, Warner can take all the characters and they can do that, whereas Marvel can't now. I mean, yeah, there are talks with bringing in Spider-Man or something like that from Sony over to Marvel, but
I'm just wondering how much the comic book maker, the comic book division, is going to be involved. I know they're going to be involved to some extent, and obviously Warner's taking the characters, but maybe Warner will go in different directions than necessarily than DC, the comic book makers would. Whereas it seems to me like Marvel, the two are closer together. Warner and DC, even though they have everything, it seems like that could be abstracted out. It could be a matter of which studio under Warner they give a project to decides how to go with it, rather than tying in with how things are going in the comic books, rather than tying in with the personalities there. And we've seen too that they seem to kind of do this. Like with Batman ones, it's gone in so many different directions. Yes, they've often been based on some Batman comic book stuff, but it seemed to me, and I'm not behind the scenes, that they let whoever's like heading up the producers and the writers heading up whatever project just go with it themselves without necessarily caring about how
which works for me. I mean, you want to have a little bit of a separation. Comic books don't work as movies if you just directly port them, because I mean it wouldn't work. Comic books work.
Well, we've seen how well things have worked out for Marvel having that close tie. Like, it's not like they're directly porting.
But they're borrowing stories, but they're changing them to make them more real life. So that's pretty interesting. And moving on from that, I want to, we're finally, and maybe Kevin Feige watched Words to My Face last week, where I complained about there not being any diversity in the Marvel lineup, because we're finally seeing some diversity. We have getting a Black Panther movie, so that's the break from the 30 to 40 white guy superhero. Then we're getting a Captain Marvel movie, which will be a female lead character. The Inhumans have a lot of female lead characters in there. Just like with DC, they had already announced the Wonder Woman. Suicide Squad has a lot of different people in there. Cyborg, he's a black superhero. So we're finally seeing more diversity that is reflected in the comics, because both of these groups have huge waves of diversity. But we weren't seeing that in the cinematic universe, and I just think that this is gonna just
I think
bring.
part of that was just not having X-Men, because X-Men is the biggest diversity point for Marvel, because that's the whole point of X-Men. If these are a diverse
Black Panther
group.
was one of the main members. I mean, the Avengers, they jump in and out, of course, but Black Panther was always a big part of the Avengers. So why couldn't you just introduce him before that? I mean, it just, I think that they're finally, and it's going to make it more interesting because you open it up to across the world instead of just one little part. So I like to see that both groups are doing this, because that just makes the characters more dynamic. It just makes it more relatable to everybody, not just one person. I mean, the area we live in, there's so much diversity here. Just seeing a bunch of white people running around on the screen does not make me think of real life. So, yeah, I know it's weird coming from a white guy, but that's how I feel. So that's what I'm going to say. But yeah, and then the other thing I want to talk about, the last thing, is that looks like Marvel, with the Guardians of the Galaxy, with the Inhumans, is actually spreading out into the cosmos. Whereas it looks like with DC, it's the cosmos coming down to Earth. Superman coming from outer space and everything like that. So I find that very interesting, because both of them have very big galactic things. Green Lantern, half of his stories take place out in space somewhere. But it seems like they're really going to be focusing on the Earthbound antics of what happens. Whereas it started with Marvel with the Earthbound stuff, like the aliens coming here, and now they're going to go out with the Guardians of the Galaxy out there somewhere. And, those are going to tie into other stories here and there. And then the Inhumans, if you don't know about them, I think we'll do a real spotlight on them some other time. But they started as humans that were abducted by Kree and experimented on, given superpowers. So it's just, I find it interesting. I don't know which way I like better. I think I like both ways pretty darn good. I found that kind of interesting.
Yeah, honestly, I'm going to say I do still lean towards Marvel. I like their stories better. I think they have a better track record. I like what they're planning to do with Marvel, and what they have done so far. But you never know. DC maybe could show us up. Maybe can make it sway the other way.
Plenty of room to prove us wrong, because and now there's the whole thing. With Marvel, they started later than DC did, so they had to develop their characters a lot later. And a lot of people say it's not about who invents it. It's about the next person who comes right behind them, because they are able to see what went wrong with said things and make it better. So a lot of the characters you see from Marvel and DC kind of mirror each other. And I think I agree with you that I like some of the Marvel ones better, because they see what DC did and said, okay, well, let's change his character a little bit more. He'll have similar power type, but he'll be a little bit different, and just kind of they innovated on the original invention. So that's kind of how I feel. But let us know what you guys think about any of these things in the Marvel universe. Who are you voting for? Is it going to be Marvel movie universe or DC universe? And again, when I say Marvel, I mean the Marvel Studios versus WB. So let us know. Hit us up, comments down below. Of course, at Where's My Face on Twitter, where'smyface@gmail.com, where'smyface.com, Google Plus and Facebook. Always good ways of getting a hold of us.